So we're going to start with just some high-level questions. I want to give some perspective into what are your lives today. So what is the org structure? We'll start with Ray. At Engagio, what does your sales team look like today? Give us some perspective on your marketing team. What are the size and scope we're working with here?
Sure. And I guess before I talk, I'll try to give myself at least a tiny bit of credibility on why you should listen to me. And that, so like Kenny said, I was early at Marketo, and like our counterpart down there, Nudge mentioned, it was Marketo and Eloqua in the early days, kind of market innovation wars. And it was kind of like, you know, the whole like bad boy versus what was the Death Row Records out in Southern California, where you had this East Coast West Coast thing going on between Eloqua and Marketo. It was a lot of fun. But so I joined there early as an AE, and I used to go to the same type of pop-ups that you guys are all here going to now, and check out startups and learn and try to grow my career as fast as I could. And so I started early at Marketo as the 28th employee, the third AE in the door. And then after 2 years, I was the first person inside the company promoted to a manager role. And then after another 2 years or so, I ran all of our North America SMB business at Marketo, which is actually the biggest part of Marketo's business. It was a $35 million a year net new business company growing at 35-40% year over year. So pretty chunky business. So I was there for a while, and what was interesting about Marketo is that I was able to see Marketo go from toddler to teenager to adult to, that's kind of where they are now. They're in that adult phase, and there's still a lot of room for growth there, but I was able to see it kind of go from cool company to great company. And so there's, in the Valley, there's a lot of opportunities, right? There's lots of startups, and you're a cool company until you go IPO. And then when you go IPO, you're no longer cool. It just, the stink of you, people are like at my last couple of years at Marketo, I introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm Ray with Marketo. People would be like, oh, nice. And it wasn't because Marketo's not a good company, it is, but because in the Valley, once you go IPO, you're no longer cool. So I was able to be part of that journey at Marketo. I'm off with my old co-founder, John Miller, building Engagio, which we think is going to be a great company. And so that's why, as I riff up here and talk through some things, there might be a few tidbits in there that are worth your time. And I do have my phone. I know somebody else has got their phone on volume up. I do too, because if my wife calls me twice, that's the signal. So we've got a month to go, so we should be fine. But if they call, that's why. That's why it's on. Now, getting back to your original question, though. Ask me that again.
Yeah. What does the org structure look like today? How many salespeople, how many marketing folks at Engagio?
So right now, we've got 6 people on the sales team. We have 2 account development reps, and those are essentially what some may call sales development. So we've got 1 inbound and 1 outbound. And then we have 4 senior AEs. And I decided to kind of give them the senior account executive title because they're essentially what I call the millennial hybrid, where it's someone that is comfortable and isn't above doing 25, 35, 40K deals over the phone, but also someone that's very capable of going out to Ohio with an SE and sitting down with a market executive in a room of 5 to 10 people. So right now, my sales org has 6. We'll have probably 12 by January 1st. And then in 2017, we'll likely have around 28. So we're going to grow pretty quick.
How many of them are from Marketo?
Not a lot. So look, Marketo was very good to me, and I don't have any interest in pillaring a place that I helped build. So sure, John's from Marketo, and so am I, and there's a lot of people there that would probably do pretty well at Engagio, but we're trying to make sure we build a company that's very different. It's funny, I actually bumped into our VP of product, and she said to me, oh, you're building a little mini Marketo over there? And I said, not even close. And it was the truth. Because Marketo did a lot of things really well. One of them was execution. One that I think even the senior leaders would agree they didn't necessarily do well was early stage culture. And so we're trying to really make sure we do that right at Engagio, and it's pretty cool. And like, just Hana, for you, just to give you a trip around the bases, this is really cool space. You've already identified like your values that you probably live by. It's 70 employees, whatever you have. Really good stuff. And you don't really realize it until you're in somewhere early that a lot of this work sets the stage for growth. And I walked in the door and I was really impressed with the space and all this too. So really good stuff.
Cool.
Really good stuff.
Is it our turn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Share with us what you're working with here.
Yeah, no, so I just on that, I will say that so I was at Uberflip like before it was 20 people, before we were doing what we were doing. Totally different product, totally different space, focused on SMB. And I will say that the culture stuff is an ongoing concern. So what was really easy to maintain at 20 people is actually really hard to maintain at even 50 or 60 or 70 people. It takes a much more purposeful effort in order to start to do that. So for those of you that are in sort of companies that are growing towards that size, definitely keep that in mind. In terms of our sort of org structure, so just to talk a little bit sort of around marketing and sales. So marketing team, we're 12 people right now. Essentially, there are 4 marketing functions. Content marketing, obviously, we're a content marketing company. That's a big part of what we do. It's the foundation of our strategy. Demand generation, product marketing, and events marketing. For a lot of you who sort of know marketing or sell to marketing, hopefully you know this, marketing is a very integrated thing. So our team is very cross-functional, very collaborative. It's very rare that we have any initiative in marketing that doesn't require at least 2 of those functions to work together. Now, we also work closely with the sales team, which is 20, I'm looking at Brophy right now, 2-ish?
22-ish.
22-ish? So 13?
13 BDRs.
13 BDRs, okay. 13 BDRs.
About 20.
Around 20, and the rest of them are AEs. We work with both the BDRs and the AEs. So when we work with BDRs, it's really a lot of work around number 1, process, lead management, also really working with them on messaging, right? Because they are marketers selling to marketers, they've got a built-in marketing team that they can start to work with around that stuff. So we really try and leverage that as much as possible. And again, working with the AEs very closely as well, because same sort of deal, right? I mean, they're selling to marketers, so they need to essentially become marketing experts, and we try to be that resource for them as much as possible.
Cool. Can everyone hear all of us? Yeah? Cool. So there's a lot of folks here who may come from established teams, but are relatively small sales and marketing teams. Both of you coming from teams that start off pretty small. What does it look like growing a sales and marketing team from scratch? What should companies here know that are in early stages about hiring those first few sales reps, those marketing reps? What really stands out, and what helps in kind of building those more specialized areas within the team?
Right. So I look at this basically in 3 phases, and whether you're talking about a startup in general or whether you're talking about teams within startups, I think the first phase is what I call the Wizard of Oz phase. So you're like really small, you're kind of following the yellow brick road, but don't look behind the curtain because it's a fucking shit show, right? There's no process and nobody really knows what they're doing. And for a lot of times, I don't know if you found this, but like really early stage teams, startups, but also just early marketing teams and bigger orgs that they've never had marketing before. That's what it's like, probably the same with sales. The second phase is what I call sort of the Scooby-Doo phase. So you've started to figure stuff out. You've maybe got a few more people on your team. You've got some more defined processes in place. Maybe they're starting to specialize a little bit in terms of their individual roles. But it's kind of the Scooby-Doo phase because you usually solve the problem, but you're still sort of bumbling around like idiots for the most part, right? And then the last phase, and this is where we all aspire to as any org starts to grow, is like the Ocean's 11 phase, right? Where everyone's super specialized, they're super coordinated, everybody's got their stuff together, they're well funded for the most part, right? They either have money from VCs or they're starting to make money and they've actually got some pipeline built. So if you look at it from that lens, that's really sort of how I think just teams in general start to evolve. So I know when sort of we were building the marketing team from scratch, when I first started, I had like 2.5 marketers and they were basically interns and fresh out of school and totally not what we have right now. And as the team starts to grow, you start to identify different areas where you need to specialize. And for marketing, that's going to be different for every company because your marketing strategy very much dictates the type of makeup of your team. But generally speaking, marketing teams are very cross-functional in terms of skill set, but also in terms of sort of the roles. So they're cross-functional within the team, but also marketing touches every single other team, touches product, touches sales, touches customer success. So you have to keep that in mind as you build up the team.
Love that analogy. The 3 phases.
No,
I think you
one.
enjoyed that too.
I don't think I'm going to be able to top that one. Can you give me the question again, just so I can?
Sure. So you're building a sales team from scratch,
Yeah.
right? What should other companies here know that either are starting to build a sales team or are in the process of they've made a couple hires, but now they're trying to scale that sales team?
Got it. So Hannah's probably way more versed in the early stage than I am. I kind of consider myself both a builder and a grower, and that I was in early enough at Marketo to truly be a part of building that. But most of my time was actually spent growing that. But I do I've come to find that I'm very much a $1 to $100 million guy. Like, that's where I like it. Like, I went to a small elementary school, a small college, a small high school. I like being in a place where if you do really good work, like, you know the crew around you, and you don't not know someone's name if it's in sales operations or some department. You know everybody. So I found that about myself. On the early stage, the way I've kind of started to approach building my sales team is how many people in this room are at a company that's under 50 employees? Okay, so a good chunk. Like what Hannah said, I've come to find that culture is essentially a 2x multiplier of your employee count. So if you've got a great culture, but you've got 100 people, you have as much manpower as a 200-person company with an average culture. And so, I never really understood that until my last, I'd say, 6 weeks in Engagio, and that we have 22 people, but we rock, and we run at a very fast pace, and everybody is very happy, and they get a lot of stuff done. And when you're a bigger company, and you have directors of your customer community, which is probably owned by you or you're on some of your content team,
Yeah.
it just the pace slows down a little bit. And so flipping back over to the importance of culture is everybody on my team, even in ADR, can reject a hire. So even if I brought in an AD that was a rainmaker, and everybody thought they were great, but the ADR, the 22-year-old that just graduated from the University of Michigan, if she doesn't like that person, it's a non-hire. And it's worth it. Because you can find, there's a lot of great people in the Valley, and if there's a small risk that the culture is going to take a hit, it's not worth it. And over time, you'll have to make a trade-off at some point. You will, probably 50 or maybe 100 employees, but when you're really early, it's just not worth doing. And so for those of you that are at these smaller companies, I would encourage you to ask or try to get involved in the interview process for people that come and join your team if you're not already. Because if you love what you do there, and for one reason or another the wrong person slips through, it can change the company. Like every single hire that we make, at least till probably 40 at Engagio, this company will be a different company because of that hire. So the way I've gone about approaching it on my team is, we're careful not to overanalyze, and so there's some that have maybe been neutral about a hire, and so I'll have to kind of try and say, is that a no or is that a yes? And they're kind of protecting themselves on the neutral. That way, if it doesn't work out, they'd be like, well, I said I didn't want to make the hire. So I'm always like, you can't do that. You got to make up your mind. But it's important to make sure everybody's aligned. And so for me, as I've gone and built out this sales team, I've tried to create a team of specialists. So in the account-based marketing world, or account-based everything world, there's a lot of kind of point products that might be a part of that right now. Maybe predictive analytics, something like lead to account matching, attribution analytics for marketers, whatever it might be. And I've tried to go out and hire a specialist in each one of those functional areas, because we're looking to become kind of the platform for everything. And that way I have a person or two that's very much a specialist in a generalized area that can help and add color when needed.
I'm analyzing too. I'm thinking about it, right? I'm gonna direct this question to Ray because I think I know Hannah's response to this. But so early on, and a few folks here when purchasing your tickets ask questions: what challenges do you face, and what would you like to hear? People ask questions about content marketing, and that's because today marketers seem to be inundated with emails, content, events, tweets, in-mails, How do you break through that noise as an early startup who doesn't necessarily have the credibility, but you're also building it out?
Sure.
So you're trying to create something different.
So I'll throw something out there that I think if there's one takeaway you can get from this talk, this might be it. Especially if you're in sales. And that is, it's not what you say anymore, it's where you say it. And I'll give you an example. So Tom Tungus, who's a VC at Redpoint, a friend of mine, wrote a really good article about 2 months ago that talked about how there's like 15 different inboxes for communication that people have. Phone, email, text, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, Pinterest, Twitter. You know, I could probably name, maybe Tinder. I don't know. I don't use it. I'm not familiar. But you get my point. There's a lot of places that people communicate, and the trick, if you're in sales really or marketing, is figuring out where that person is communicating. So I'll kind of go off the cuff here, Hannah. What is your social media advice? Like, what's the one area where you're relatively responsive? It could be email or phone, but you know, if someone wanted to get your attention, where do you spend the most time?
Probably Twitter.
Okay. And I'm probably the same. And so if you call me or you email me, you probably won't get my attention. But if you retweet something that I say or you ping me there, then you probably will. And so when we're talking about content, there is an art to kind of understanding where people want to be found and sizing that up a little bit. And you can look, like, for example, on LinkedIn, something I started to do recently is if I was thinking about dropping Hannah a message, I would go to her recent activity and make sure that she's shared something or liked something or done something on LinkedIn recently. Because if she hasn't touched it, then she's probably one of those people that has 800 different messages in their LinkedIn inbox and is unlikely to respond. So I might try something else. Or if I was going to hit her on Twitter, when's the last time she tweeted? Has it been a month or has it been an hour? That's all more likely. A funny example is I dropped a note to a relatively well-known CMO in the space last night at 7:25, and she replied back to me in 2 minutes. She's like, "I'm actually reading my kids a nighttime story, but I'd love to meet and grab a cup of coffee." But I knew that because she was all over Twitter. That was her preferred medium. So tying it all back to the question that you asked around content is, I think you want to try to you got to figure out where you want to make the investment, but if you are selling something to people that are between the ages of 23 and 34, you should probably be thinking about Snapchat, maybe a little bit. If you are, so I guess that's the example I can come up with. Like that group, if you want to sell something to those people, a lot of those people are probably their first communication channel is Snapchat. So the great content's great content, but great content put in a place that nobody's watching isn't great content for the sole purpose it's not the right place.
I would sort of add to that and say that, as much as where you say it matters, what you say obviously matters as well. What I find is missing from a lot of the outreach that I get, because I get a ton of sales outreach. And by the way, guys, we all know you use the same template when I do a search in my Gmail for should I stay or should I go. I'm not even joking you. 26 different emails from a whole bunch of different sales reps show up. So you guys need to mix it up a little bit. But that aside, what's interesting, and this applies to me, and this also applies to a lot of the personas that we actually reached out to at Uberflip. We recently did sort of a deep dive into some of our personas. We market to marketers. I know a lot of you guys do too. So specifically, we reached out to some people at the VP Marketing CMO levels. And the interesting thing that we found out is that they all actually read the outbound outreach that goes into their inbox. So do I. I will look at all of the stuff that you guys send me. I don't often respond. Most of the time I don't respond, but I still look at it, right? Now, partly it's that I kind of want to stay up on the industry, partly it's that I want to see sort of what is coming in, partly it's that I want to forward it to my BDRs and say, do this, it was really good, or don't do this, this was crappy, right? Adam is shaking his head yes, because he's like, yes, I get those emails all the time. As much as where you say I think matters, and yes, I'm going to reply probably way quicker on Twitter, But if you send me an email, I'm probably going to see it. And if it's the right email and it's actually relevant to my life, and if it's something that I'm going to care about, then yeah, I'm probably going to respond to it.
And jumping in on that one, because you're scratching at something that's bothering me, so I got to get this off my chest. And that is the robo-spam has to stop. And when I say robo-spam, I think that over-automation is really hurting our profession.
Yeah.
And now you've got some technologies that are trying to bring the same type of kind of marketing automation power to salespeople, and I just don't like that at all for a couple reasons. And granted, what you write is important. So I'm not sitting here saying you can write the worst email in the world, and as long as it's on Twitter, I'll respond. So it's all context. But the whole 3 emails, the why you now, the shape your email like an F, the 10-80-10, whatever type of framework you're working with is Kramer would say from Seinfeld is played. I can't do it as good as him, but if you've seen the episode, he says like that's played. And it is. And so you've got to find a way to be human in your outreach. Like for me, I don't read every email. And what I actually try to identify is, was this email actually written for me? And if I sniff it anywhere in the email that's not written for me, and it could have been copy pasted, no matter what it is, even if it's the greatest company in the world, I'm out. I just don't. I want to be spoken to like I'm actually there. And email is not a sales strategy, and that's becoming one. Where I can't get them on the phone, so I'm just going to send an email. And I get it. Look, I'm in sales. I haven't picked up my phone I don't even have a desk phone. So there is a reality to that. But that's where you've got to use some of the other channels. A little bit. I wrote an article that talks about how selling is. I think I said it was 40% phone, 45% email, and 15% social. And the social part of that is growing upwards depending on your market. Your sales or marketing, I think it is trending up. But it is changing, so you have to be willing to try new things. But the whole robo-spam thing is not going to do us any favors.
Yeah, just quick note on that. Do you remember when we implemented outreach? So sales automation, doesn't really matter which one you implemented. So we implemented it. We started using it on the BDR level. BDR is basically treated it like marketing automation because that's what it was there for, right? It was supposed to automate. Our SAL, the SQL conversion, plummeted in the first month. And everybody in marketing freaked out. We're like, whoa, what's going on? And then we looked to see what was actually happening. We're like, oh, okay, hold on a second. We need to rein this back a little bit. And we reined it back. We fixed it really quickly.
It wasn't me.
But it wasn't broken. I actually believe that. So, and it's not that it was any single person's fault. Listen, like that's the temptation with all of these tools, right? It was a matter of, okay, we have this tool that should be used in this way, not just to blanket robo-spam everybody. So, like, really be careful with the guidelines that you actually put in place with your BDRs if you are going to actually leverage those tools. I think that's a big part of it.
And here's what happens too if you don't. So it's good that you caught that.
Yeah.
Most VPs of marketing, frankly, haven't yet. And what happens is you work hard to acquire these names that are quality, and then they get burned through by do you want a meeting, do you want a meeting, do you want a meeting?
Yeah.
And now there's no relationship, and there's a short-term gain because the ADR team. Notice how I keep calling them ADR, account development reps. It's kind of my shtick, but there's a short-term gain by just sending a ton of emails out and getting some meetings, but the long-term downside is it tires your database out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I know this because before Marketo, I was at a company called Genius.com. You might remember Genius. You probably thought they were going to play in the space, but they never did. And we used to preach to all of our customers that the way to use Genius was to send a blast of like 300 emails in the morning and then follow up with them when they hit the Genius tracker. And it worked for like a month, and then the gimmick wore out, and then our whole database didn't like us. So
then let's jump into tools. So I'm going to fall into your trap.
okay.
What's ABM? What's account-based everything?
Well,
I don't wanna put
I
you
think
on
the
the spot
marketer should actually answer that question first,
All right.
if you're okay with
I'm
that. And then
totally,
I'll-
totally happy with that. So, I mean, it's funny. I kind of am always have been very conflicted with the term ABM because honestly, to me, it's just like doing marketing properly at this point, right? But I think really where ABM becomes helpful is if your sales team is really focused on a targeted account approach, which, you know, for a lot of us, they should be at this stage. ABM can be really helpful in doing a couple of things. So number one, helping provide air cover for the sales team. And, you know, we can get into the tactics of ABM at another point, but there's a lot of different ways you can execute on ABM, including content marketing, but also advertising, also really targeted outreach, also building campaigns for specific accounts. There's a lot of different things you can do, but the idea is that all of those activities are supporting that target account list. And I think that I actually love what John's doing with account-based everything because it can't just be marketing. Right? It cannot just be marketing. It's got to be a more strategic play across the company because, like, marketing can't just go market to a whole bunch of accounts, right? They need to be coordinating with sales, who's actually reaching out to people within those accounts. That needs to be coordinating with your executive team, who's actually strategically picking some of those accounts, right? So I hesitate to say this is what ABM is. I feel like your entire company needs to be oriented towards account-based sort of functions in general. I don't know that.
No, I agree with a lot of what you said. And so I've now, you know, I've grown up in the market automation world, which is, you know, cast the net out, do a ton of inbound marketing, bring in the minnows, send that to your account development team, and have them follow up, and then pass some of those over to sales. But your conversion rate from name to opportunities is very low, you know, 1-2%. I think the definition that I probably give on account-based marketing is very similar to what Hana said, is around a specific targeted business focus on a group of specific either net new customers that you want to acquire or existing ones that you want to grow. And then also, or deal sizes above, I'd say, 25K in average annual contract value. You don't do A/B anything to deals that are under 20K. Like in that case, I call it ABN, account-based nothing. Don't do anything account-based. And even though I do work for an account-based everything company, I'm not one of those people. You'll see some people talking that'll be like, oh, we're 100% account-based. Wrong. Like that's a mistake. Unless you are, you know, Guidewire software that only sells to 500 insurance companies in the world. So you want to have a balance. And you know, I've got a couple kids, and almost every analogy I give is a little bit of kids to it. But my kids were on the seesaw the other day, and the way that I think about account-based marketing is, I do actually believe that there's traditional demand gen inbound, and there's account-based. And I think that the modern CMO of 2017, their job is to take a look at the company where they're at and their budget, and then say, okay, based on my initiatives for the year, I'm going to invest 75% in inbound and 25% in account-based. And then as you grow, it will likely change. So for instance, at Marketo, we were an amazing inbound company. That is what we knew how to do really well. We had John's machine, you know, we had good thought leadership, good product, and so we were really great at inbound. But it caught up to us over time that we weren't good at account-based, because big companies don't buy the way an inbound lead buys. You know, the VP of marketing at HP doesn't go to your website, download your webinar, talk to your 22-year-old ADR, have a great conversation, and then start an enterprise buying cycle. That's not how those deals work, and that's why you know, we think that it's important enough to kind of be its own section of the marketing budget. I'd also agree with Hana in that I think it is account-based everything, because you can't do account-based marketing if Adam's team or the business development team isn't following up on what you're generating or what you're asking them to call. And you can't do account-based selling or ABS or ABSD, whatever they want to call it, unless they've got some air cover for marketing. So it is, I'm finding that it very much is a business level initiative, and that you need to have, because the problem with account-based anything is that it actually takes a long time to get the results. So if you're like, oh man, I gotta save Q4, I'm gonna do account-based marketing, that's not gonna be good. Now if your mindset is, hey, Q4 is gonna be tough, but I wanna make sure we get ourselves in a better position for 2017, then I think account-based marketing or account-based anything could be your answer. But it's not a quick fix. And you know, I think the world did get a little drunk on inbound marketing, where it's like, oh, just go down to Sandal Road, raise 25 million, put it into your website, buy more Kendo, and the trees will just grow to the sky. And it's not the reality.
So I'm going to switch gears here a bit, and we're going to move on to how you guys have gone to where you are today, career pathing, hiring, those types of things. And so I'm curious to know how you guys have, over the span of your careers and to where you are today, how you've transitioned to those individual contributor roles to now, which is a VP level and managing teams. So, you know, can you walk us through where you started? What's your advice to those people who aspire or would like to manage a team or to get to those leadership roles? What advice you'd give to some of the folks here back at, you know, their mid young 20s?
Pretty confident.
Sure. I don't know. My background is kind of like super random.
Yeah, it is.
It's like agreeing with me. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Thanks
you look
for
at
that.
her LinkedIn and like, it's like, whoa.
No, it's a little bit all over the place. So, I mean, like, I have a finance degree, which is completely out of nowhere, which I've never used in my life. But that's really what I started. It's like finance degree, and I'm gonna go to like, I don't know, Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch. Very glad I did not do that, by the way. But I mean, after that, I did a few things. I really pre-tech life. I actually managed a chain of martial arts studios. So there were about 9 locations. I'm getting a really weird look from that guy. So there were about 9 locations. I taught professionally for about 10 years. So I was teaching jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and I was managing the collective marketing for all 9 locations. Now, the interesting thing about doing marketing for bricks and mortar business at that time, and this was way back, like Twitter was not really a thing at that point, was that I got to kind of take them from running sort of very traditional marketing to all of a sudden they needed an online business. All of a sudden, I was playing around with gaming local search for Google, which was way easier back then. All of a sudden, it was starting to build that online presence and starting to shift a lot of their business basically to coming from online. And that's kind of where I got the bug and sort of started to get into the tech scene and the startup scene. And then from there, it was just a matter of like finding the right companies. I founded my own company at one point, stepped back from that, started consulting with a lot of venture-backed startups in the city. And then I ended up sort of meeting the founders of Uberflip. So a bunch of companies and stuff in between that I missed, but like, I would say that career path is really what you make it. I don't know a lot of people that have done sort of the traditional, I went to school for this, and then I got a job at the same thing, and then I did that for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know a lot of people like that. I don't know if you do.
I don't. You know, for me, I'd say that there's a skill that you don't really realize is a skill, but it is a life skill, and that's goal setting. In you being able to understand yourself and ultimately what you want to do, and then deciding, and that's a key word, like you've got to decide to just go do it, is fortuitous. I'm throwing on some vocab here, but beer in it, so it's important to be able to identify what you want and then go and put yourself on that path to do it. So like what I've wanted has changed a lot of times in my career as I've been able to accomplish what I was chasing. So actually the one thing I didn't accomplish is when I graduated, I wanted to be an on-air television broadcaster, like Bob Costas. And then I realized the problem with that is there's only one Bob Costas. And he's still Bob Costas, and he's still doing all this stuff. And so then I didn't want to sign up for traveling to Connecticut, to Wisconsin, to all these kind of non-main metro areas for 25 years before I get a break. So then I got into sales. But being able to kind of identify where you want to go, what you want to do is important to figure that out fast. Now don't rush it if you don't know. Don't force yourself to make up your mind. But if you do, it's helpful. Like the main thing that was a lesson that was given to me in Marketo when I wanted to be a manager. You know, every AE wants to be a manager, most of them. And you've got to do the job you want before you have it, period. So, that's not my job. I'll do that when I get the job. And it doesn't work, you're not going to get the job then. You know, you've got to do it before you have it. And you got to do it in a way too, especially if you're on a big team, where it doesn't look like you're trying too hard. Because I've had that happen, where you got the guy that's like, okay, let's leave on the floor, guys, and no one likes that person, and they're obviously trying too hard. So that's how I'd say, that's the advice that I give, is I kind of big way up. The other piece of advice I would give is, there's three things that I try to abide by at Marketo, which was don't let your manager down, don't do anything stupid, and don't give up. And when I say stupid, I mean don't be the guy at the holiday party or gal that had a couple of too much to drink and the bear catches you. I don't know if you've heard the story about the bear, but at those holiday parties, it's something our old SVP sales used to say, where if you're in the forest and there's a bear chasing you and your friend, you don't have to worry about outrunning the bear. You have to worry about outrunning your friend. And so the same thing happens at like those holiday parties, where just don't do anything stupid that's going to hurt your personal brand. So.
It's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, one thing though that I would add, for a second there I thought you were going to say follow your passion. I was going to like out on you.
Screw your passion.
Yeah, so I would just say, that's bad advice. Don't do that, because you oftentimes don't know what you're passionate about, right? Like you need to explore and understand, and as you said, it might take time to figure it out. You can become passionate about something that you really start to understand, and if it starts to resonate with you. So the whole follow your passion thing, don't do that. It's bad advice.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up, because do you have something else to say?
Well, no, that was my rant. But the other thing I will say too is a lot of people automatically assume that they do need to go through that, like, oh, I'm going to become a manager, and then I'm going to become a VP, and then I'm going to become, or director, VP, whatever. Here's the thing. Not everybody necessarily wants to or should, but they think they should, or they feel like they should follow that path. So I would also ask yourself, like, is that really what you want to be doing? Do you want to be managing a team, or is becoming even more specialized and an even more value-added individual contributor what you want to be doing? And a really great example of this is, I think everyone here is familiar with Unbounce in Vancouver. They recently brought on this guy, Michael Agard, who is like the smartest CRO guy I have ever seen in my life. Senior guy, very senior guy, very well paid. He's an individual contributor. He doesn't have a team, but he's the head of CRO, but he does the CRO there. He doesn't want to manage a team because he wants to go deeper and specialize into his role. So just understand what it is that you want, and understand that you don't have to go that route if that route doesn't feel right for you guys. And every junior person that I come in, it's always when you talk to them, it's like, oh, I want to eventually move into a leadership role. And I'm like, do you really? Like, are you sure you really want to do that? So think about that a little bit more critically.
So that moves on to my next point. How do you choose a company? Oftentimes people think that the interview process is just the company choosing them, but how do you both joined companies that are growing really well, very well-known brand names, and is still growing and building categories. How do you determine to make that leap and join a company where you're going to invest and commit a ton of your time?
I want to hear what you have to say, because you've done it way more times than I have.
Yeah, I did get a couple pings, because I was telling people, like, Engagio is going to be big, and then 22 million people like, told me, and I just vote. You have to put yourself in a position where you're not running from your current company. That's the number one thing. So I knew that I was going to leave Marketo in July of 2013. That was almost 3 years ago. And my boss at the time kind of did me a solid and gave me some chips in the game and got me to stay another 2 years. But I knew, like, even last year, I was looking. I would have left for the right thing. And there's a lot of stuff in the valley. They give you more money, more title, more equity, all that stuff. But if you're not going to win, it doesn't matter. It's all about finding a place where the company's set up to win and you're potentially set up to win. So you've got to be selective. In order to do that, you've got to do the job that you're in right now at a high level, even when you know it's probably time. It's hard. That's a challenging time. When you know, like, you love the people that you work for, and you love the groups that you run, but maybe the company just isn't quite right for you, and so it's really easy to just start doing half-ass work, and then they get onto you, and then you got to find something, and then something sounds really good because you're looking now, and they want you, and then you take it. And so there's a whole other discussion around what characteristics you look for to find that hopefully next big thing. But the fundamental thing is making sure you're not running from where you are. Because if you're doing that, you're toast. Because you're going to make a mistake. There's a guy that is the CMO at Slack. I'm actually sporting my Slack socks today. Yeah, it's funny. I tried to take a picture of these and send it to him. Be like, hey, let's talk about ABM and respond. But I'll tweet him. I'd send him an email.
Bill?
Yeah.
Bill.
So Bill was at Zendesk. He was at Bill McKitis' last run has been
Crazy.
Salesforce, Zendesk, Slack. That's a run. And he was like employee 250 at Salesforce and Zendesk, and then like 25 at Slack or something ridiculous. So that guy, he's doing A work, and then the next rocket ship leaves, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna jump onto this one. That's someone that I kind of look up to as he's doing it right, because each move is like you're getting married, and you've got to be aggressive, but also careful. Like I took what I would classify as an intelligent risk, moving from Marketo to Engagio. Same space, same usual suspects, so I already know the market. It's right in my hometown, so I don't have to worry about a commute. And I really trust the CEO, John. And I can learn a lot from him. So those were some of the factors for me, but just tactically, looking at things like Twitter follower growth, using a tool that you can have on your phone like Mattermark. They have this thing called Growth Score, where you can take a look at if that company is growing or not. Asking questions such as, how many employees did you have last year at this time? How many do you have now? Like, if you talk to somebody and you're like, yeah, I had 50 last year, and now I have 20. That's not going to be a good place to go, most likely. So little things like that have allowed me to kind of try to make some bets that I think will pay off. What would you add?
I don't think I would add much. I mean, I think you have to take all of those factors into account, and I think at the end of the day, you do have to a degree kind of trust your gut. I like what you said about taking an intelligent risk. Don't take a stupid risk. And there's a lot of opportunity for stupid risks out there. So make sure you ask the hard questions and make sure you fully trust the people that you're going to work with. That's pretty much all I can add to that.
Well, so we've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to tie something back to a theme that I see at every event, because the majority of the audience is from sales, is what makes someone successful in sales? What are the personality traits that you look when you're either working to build a team with the sales function or looking to hire sales reps to be the first few ADRs or be the first few AEs?
Let's do this. Let's go back and forth here. I'll say one, you say one. And let's see what we miss. I'll kick off. I'll say drive. So someone that is self-motivated, wants to, they have something to prove, and it's natural. It's not something that has to be injected or managed. Like they just have that in them, I think is key.
Yeah, I would say empathy, particularly for selling marketers, because I know our reps definitely do that. But I think that you have to really be able to understand and get inside the head of the person that you're talking to, that you're selling to, that you're trying to help. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to help them. You're not just trying to pitch them this product. So I think empathy is a big one that's often overlooked.
Next one I'd throw out there is confidence. And there's different types of confidence. It doesn't have to be gregarious, it could be like a quiet confidence, but there's got to be something where they can be convincing, and when someone else looks in their eyes, they believe it. That's you see it all the time with salespeople that don't love the product they're